What is religion? Religion is defined as a system of faith and worship, but can also include supernatural powers. These powers can be used for good or evil purposes and is often regarded as magic. By performing certain magical acts, crops might be improved, game herds replenished, illnesses cured or avoided, as well as granting fertility in both humans and animals. This form of magic is often regarded as witchcraft. However, from Durkheim's perspective, witchcraft is viewed as magic alone rather than a religion, because it focuses on the individual instead of the moral community. Kelly Hayes argues against this idea when referring to the Afro-Brazilians by stating, "What separates religion from magic? Legitimate spiritual practices from illegitimate ones. Who is empowered to define which appeals to the supernatural constitute religion and which do not?" Just like Kelly Hayes, here we view witchcraft and magic as a part of religion. What is witchcraft? Witchcraft is used interchangeably with terms like occult, magic, and enchantment. It also refers to local beliefs about good and evil, as well as causation. In France, the people of Bocage are described as gullible, backwards, and marginal due to their belief in witchcraft. Reporters assume that witchcraft is a medieval perspective of peasants who wrongly assign their misfortunes to non-existent witches. They further assume that peasants practice witchcraft because they are incapable of correctly handling casual relations. However, Jean Favret-Zada argues that these individuals are capable of coping with casual relations and that witchcraft are words used to express biological misfortunes such as sterility, illness, and death in both animals and humans. Witchcraft is also used to distinguish between ordinary misfortunes and extraordinary misfortunes. Ordinary misfortunes would be a single case of an illness or death, whereas extraordinary misfortunes would be repeated cases of an illness or death. Witchcraft typically involves three individuals: the witch, the victim, and the unwitcher. The witch hungers for other people's misfortunes and will use spoken words to capture their victim. Thus, the victim is the individual who is bewitched and must go to an unwitcher to get uncaught by the witch. However, before seeking an unwitcher, a victim will go to a priest and request for an interpretation of their misfortune and for a cure. A priest usually chooses from three different interpretations. 1. The priest may dismiss the victim's misfortune as a part of natural order. In this situation, the priest may also encourage the victim to see a psychiatrist. 2. The priest may acknowledge that the victim's misfortunes are due to supernatural order. Or 3. The priest may agree with the victim that the misfortunes are the work of the devil. With this interpretation, the priest may consult with an exorcist, pray for the victim, or play the role of an unwitcher. The unwitcher is responsible for protecting the victim from evil spells. More specifically, the unwitcher will take the words that were originally spoken to the victim and send them back to the witch.
Evans Pritchard did a study on the Azande people and their view on witchcraft. For them, witchcraft is a way of life that is intertwined within laws, agriculture, hunting, religion, and is seen as an explanation for ill-fated events that affect both men and women. It is part of natural discourse, and there's no surprising aspect to it. People actually expect witchcraft to occur. In fact, what is considered strange is when there is no discussion about witchcraft in someone's everyday life. For the Azande, if an everyday situation goes awry and solely affects that one individual, then the causation can be linked to witchcraft. Therefore, it is important to note that not every situation is attributed to witchcraft. For example, if a child falls ill or if a man is injured, the causation to those events are natural phenomena and are not due to witchcraft. Actually, most people are more likely to excuse their immoral behavior to witchcraft in order for them to get sympathy. However, others would attribute it to the person's inexperience or illogical mindset. Whatever the case may be, witchcraft is difficult to justify. Witchcraft has its own moral code, but that code takes natural causations into consideration. For example, witchcraft can only be to blame if an individual has not broken a taboo and is still experiencing misfortune. Witchcraft is seen as a real event or a social fact. The Zande people do not see it as supernatural or unordinary, even if it is an uncommon event. In fact, there is little distinction between natural and supernatural. It is all seen as reality. The moral dilemma in explaining witchcraft to an anthropologist is that witchcraft may represent an action, but cannot attest to why that action occurred.
Poverty and distress provided fertile ground for spiritualism. Spiritualism was a quest for meaning in the context of the rapid industrialization period. In early 19th century, anthropologists and Westerners frequently labeled witchcraft as primitive or pre-logical. Europeans have seen to have outgrown it. African witchcraft is seen as a primitive other. Witchcraft is dynamic and it remains modern, and modern is in itself cultural. Witchcraft practices in Africa need to be understood in terms of state power, actual political processes, and local political institutions.
Since the 1980s, there has been an upsurge of popular and academic interest in witchcraft in Africa, as it's been generally termed in occult powers, ritual murders, and the commoditization of body parts, and the role of God and devil as opposing forces in the world. Contemporary witchcraft, occult practices, magic, and enhancements are neither a return to traditional practices nor a sign of backwardness or lack of progress. They're instead thoroughly modern manifestations of uncertainties and moral disquiet, unequal rewards, and aspirations in the contemporary moment. The term witchcraft is a historical one, its meaning deriving from a particular period and culture and cannot be meaningfully transferred to another. Witchcraft beliefs are tied up with moral systems, evaluator ideas, system of belief, and have to be understood in context. Witchcraft can also be understood as a matter of social diagnostics rather than belief, because for many people in Africa, witchcraft is a force that is both self-evident and solemnly real. Witchcraft is often associated with negative meanings because the local terms get translated to witchcraft and sorcery. The term may not always be associated with harmful activities, and thus it could be more sensible to use a neutral term like occult forces, which leaves an open question of whether the force is used for evil or good. Witchcraft may be philosophically meaningful, but it was also meaningful because it did things that led to the formation of new villages and lineages and to the ruin of the old ones. Witchcraft and kinship became linked in the anthropological imagination among the Zande because of the idea that witchcraft accusations were made against specific individuals and by those who were involved in specific networks of social relationship with them. The modernity of witchcraft is often presented as a critique of earlier theorists who saw witchcraft as primitive, pre-logical, static, and tightly bounded tradition. Previous scholars also misunderstood witchcraft by failing to look beyond small-scale, village-level communities. Contemporary scholars of witchcraft cast occult beliefs and practices as not only contiguous with but constitutive of modernity. Witchcraft is not only implicated in and molded by the global system, it goes further and provides some meta-commentary on the ill doings of capitalism and globalization. Witchcraft and other occult practices are bound up with people's ideas about production, exchange, and consumption. The flows of information, goods, and people's characteristic of globalization are seen as incorporating some and excluding others. The processes of differentiation and privation that result are viewed as predatory and illicit form of exchange. In many contexts, the oppressive nature of the state, combined with the corruption and the continuing impoverishment of local population, raises the questions about how wealth is produced through the exercise of illegitimate or illicit power. Witchcraft and the occult in Africa are a set of discourses on morality, sociality, and humanity on human frailty. Their form of historical consciousness, a sort of social diagnostic, and in the sense that they resemble other forms of social, economic, and political diagnostics.